Picture this. You're walking alone in the dark of the night, the cold night air nibbling at your skin. All is quiet, too quiet. In the distance, you see a silhouette standing still in the dim moonlight. Every step you take echoes in the stillness, and the weight of uncertainty intensifies. Your senses are on high alert, picking up every little sound the wind carries. There's a whisper in the air, a feeling that something isn't right. Have you ever wondered what happens when the world is asleep, and only you are awake, facing the unknown? Prepare yourself for a story that will have you questioning every shadow and every dark corner. A story that will stay with you long after you turn out the lights. I've always been drawn to night walks. There's something about the serenity that makes everything seem simpler. I'm a welder by trade and have been for over 4 decades. I live on a sprawling estate, alone with my dog Bosley. The house is very large for one person. But I never had the courage to downsize after my wife Maria passed away. My children moved out years ago, and since cancer took her, it's just me and Bosley. One evening, after a long day at the shop, I decided to go for a walk. My property is quite large, so usually one walk is enough to satisfy my need for fresh air. It was cool outside, and Bosley trotted beside me. Sometimes I think he loves me more than I love myself. I've walked that path hundreds of times, but as I headed back to the house, something caught my eye. I looked up at the second floor window, the one that overlooks the room I used to share with Maria. For a moment I thought I saw something. I stopped and stared. There was no reason for anyone to be there. I hadn't been in that room in years. I felt my blood boil at the thought that a stranger might have entered my house. So I ran inside, heart racing, and up the stairs. The room was empty. No sign of anything out of place. I searched everywhere imaginable, but found nothing. Yes, I was scared, but more angry than anything else. I assumed I had just seen something that wasn't there. The next night, I woke up to Bosley growling. He's a good dog. He never barks unless there's something to bark at. I sat up in my bed listening, and then I heard creaking sounds coming from upstairs. It could have just been the sounds of my old house. But my mind went straight to footsteps coming from the room right above mine. I thought about grabbing my hunting rifle, but I didn't want to go that far. I was confident I could take on whatever was there. I grabbed my flashlight and went to check. Nothing. The room was the same, untouched. My anger was starting to turn into anxiety. Something didn't feel right in the house. The next night, I found the kitchen lights on. I knew I had turned them off before I went to bed. I didn't leave the lights on. Someone was in my house. I panicked and called the police. I told them I thought someone might be lurking around. They searched the house from top to bottom, but found nothing. They were nice and told me to call back if I needed them, but I could tell they didn't believe me. The next night was the worst. I couldn't sleep, so I decided to check the bedroom again. Maybe I thought it would calm my mind, but when I opened the door, I froze. There were clothes strewn all over the floor. Maria's clothes that I had put away after she died. I didn't know who she was, but she didn't belong there. I had never been so scared in my life. Without thinking, I ran to her. She turned and ran down the stairs and out the front door. By the time I got outside, she was gone. I searched the property with Bosley, but there was no sign of her. I didn't sleep that night, and for months afterward I couldn't get to sleep. I was constantly on edge, convinced I heard footsteps upstairs every night. Every little noise startled me. I slept with my rifle next to my bed, terrified I'd have to use it some night. I debated calling my brother to stay with me, but I wasn't going to do that. I was raised to always handle my own problems, so that's what I did. The nightmare didn't end, though one night I was sitting in the living room, and I noticed a figure standing in the yard, staring right at me through the window. It was her again. My heart stopped. I grabbed my hunting rifle and ran outside with Bosley close behind. She was still there, just a silhouette in the moonlight, watching me. I fired a few warning shots into the air in hopes of scaring her off. That was enough to make me turn around and run into the darkness, but it didn't make me feel any better. I was literally being tormented by a random woman who was probably homeless. I couldn't even imagine why this was happening to me. I laid there for a long time, waiting to see if she would come back, but she never did. I haven't seen her since, but I know it's just a matter of time. I'm fully prepared to defend myself, but I don't think living in perpetual anxiety like this is sustainable. Thank goodness for Bosley. I have no idea what I'd do without him. I'll post an update if anything happens. I work for a catering service, which means I'm on the road a lot, usually late at night. I spend most of my time lugging stuff from place to place in this huge truck the company makes me drive. It's not the worst job in the world, but the hours are terrible, and it's not at all what I thought I'd be doing with my life. By the time I get home, I'm so high on caffeine that I either can't sleep or I pass out the moment I hit the bed and stay that way for 12 hours. I was driving back home one night, like 2 a.m. It was nice to be driving my own car again. As I got closer to my house, I realized that I probably had one too many Red Bulls, and there was no way I was going to be able to sleep. Plus, I hadn't eaten in hours and I was starving. There's a McDonald's right off the highway, 10 minutes from my house. It's usually my first choice when it comes to late night snacks, since it's so convenient. I'm not one to gorge on fast food, but every now and then I get a weird craving that only a handful of fries can satisfy. Obviously, it's open 24 hours. I thought some comfort food would be perfect to help me relax. I don't remember exactly what time it was, but it was definitely after 2 when I pulled into the drive-thru. There were a few cars in front of me, which surprised me, as I didn't expect this McDonald's to be such a busy place at 2 a.m. on a Tuesday. Impatient, I found myself staring into space, wondering what was taking so long. That's when I noticed something odd. An old Volkswagen with tinted windows parked in the corner of the lot. McDonald's was only accepting drive-thru orders at that hour, so it didn't make sense that there was a car parked in the lot, especially in a spot reserved for employees. I thought maybe it was someone eating in their car, something I'd done myself occasionally, so I couldn't judge. Regardless, it was an odd sight. I grabbed my food and started walking away. I didn't want to go home yet, but I didn't want to just sit there either. I started thinking about a good place to eat. I live in a nice green area, so there are plenty of options, but I didn't want to go into the drive-thru. Who else would be here at 2 a.m.? I realized that the car I was looking at was the same Volkswagen I had seen at McDonald's. I was 100% sure. The car was parked a little ways away, and the engine was off. I felt uneasiness start to creep in. What were the odds of that happening? Naturally, I had been followed. I looked out the partially rolled down window and realized there was no music coming from that car, or at least none that I could hear. After a minute of nothing happening, my fear began to dissipate. They were probably doing the same thing I was doing, going outside to get some fresh air or smoke. It was a popular place for that sort of thing, but it was very strange given the hour. I couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong, even though I concluded that it was one of those inexplicable coincidences. I sat there for a minute, trying to calm myself down, debating whether I should go home. I didn't want to leave, but I didn't want to be alone either. I grabbed my phone and called one of my close friends on FaceTime, who lived just a few minutes away. I told myself that if he didn't answer, I would eat in the car and then go to his house. To my surprise, he was awake, straightening out a piece of paper. I coaxed him to swing by and hang out for a while. He said he'd be there in 10 minutes. While I waited, I kept my eyes on the Volkswagen, which still hadn't moved. I tried to calm myself down by telling myself I was being paranoid. When Sebastian finally arrived at the parking lot, I felt much better. We both got out of our cars and started walking down the road before the parking lot, completely out of sight. I looked back and the Volkswagen was still there, but I saw all 4 doors open and 4 men get out of the car. We stood there for a few seconds, staring at them. They weren't talking, just looking at each other, which was weird. I nudged Sebastian, who noticed what I was looking at. Before they could see us, we continued up the trail until the lot was out of sight. Alarm bells were ringing in my head. Sebastian didn't seem worried and told me they were probably just going to smoke. We kept walking, and when we reached the top, the view of the city was enough to distract me. We sat on a small rock wall that keeps people from getting close to the edge of the mountain. There we ate and talked like we used to. It was nice, although the feeling didn't last long. We heard the sound of conversation and laughter coming closer. We turned around and saw 3 guys walking towards us, sharing what looked like a joint. They were acting friendly, which calmed my nerves a bit. However, instead of finding their own spot, they walked towards us as if they wanted to start a conversation. The guy with the joint was covered in tattoos and had a nose ring. Honestly, he looked pretty intimidating. He gave us a half smile before asking if we wanted to smoke. We both said no. One of the other guys laughed and called us cowards, to which Sebastian scoffed. My curiosity got the better of me, and I asked them what they were doing at McDonald's. The guy holding the joint stopped smiling and narrowed his eyes, surprised by my question. His 2 friends did the same, staring at us with cold expressions. They didn't say anything for a long, awkward moment. I then remembered that there were 4 guys in that car, not 3. One of them was missing. At that point, I was fully prepared to run, and I knew Sebastian was thinking that too. Finally, the ringleader told us that he worked nights and had just gotten off work. He pulled up his hoodie to reveal a McDonald's uniform, probably because he knew we wouldn't have believed him otherwise. He then went on to say that they came to this place every day after work to smoke with their friends. While that calmed me down a bit, something about this situation still seemed terribly off. I could tell Sebastian felt the same way. We decided it was time to leave. As we started walking down the path, Sebastian stopped and pointed toward the trees. I followed his gaze and saw the fourth boy half hidden in the darkness. He was holding something, but I couldn't make out what it was. I felt my heart pounding. We started running as soon as he saw us looking. He started moving, and so we ran. We ran down the path, watching him to see if he was chasing us, with the other three boys close behind. My heart was pounding so hard, I thought it might explode. I could hear his footsteps getting closer, but I didn't look back again. We finally made it to the parking lot. We got into our cars and drove out of there breathless. As I sped away, I could see those guys rushing to get into their car. I didn't feel comfortable driving home for fear of taking them straight to my home. So I called Sebastian and told him to meet me on his street. We had a good lead on them, and I don't think they were following us. But I didn't want to take any chances. When Sebastian and I met up again, we were still in shock from what had just happened. I don't know if they were trying to rob us or, worse yet, Sebastian showed me his phone and said he had taken a picture of them when they weren't looking. He sent it to me, but I wasn't sure what to do with it. I had the day off, so I convinced Sebastian to come with me back to the McDonald's, at least to report the employee. The next day, we approached a young employee in hopes that he would listen to us. We showed him the picture and told him what happened, and his eyes widened. He told us something worthy of a horror movie. Apparently, that guy had had a girlfriend who also worked at that same McDonald's and had dumped him a few months back. He didn't take it well and would harass her while she was working and follow her after her shifts. He was obviously fired, but that didn't help. The police got involved soon after, and a restraining order was issued that he had been violating by camping out in the parking lot. Sebastian and I were horrified. I have no idea why he decided to follow me, but it was clear he was unhinged. I pray the police catch him. I hope he doesn't recognize my car anywhere. It's been a week, and I haven't been back to that McDonald's or the reservation. I hope the police can do something. That's out of my control. Forgive me if I don't remember every detail of the story. It happened some time ago. I grew up in Ardmore, Pennsylvania. There's not much going on around here, so finding things to do can be a challenge. In high school, some friends and I used to sneak in and explore old abandoned buildings. That was the kind of thing we did at that age. I didn't realize how popular that kind of activity was until many years later. Apparently, a lot of people like exploring abandoned buildings. Anyway, there was an abandoned church we had been to a couple of times before. It was in Narberth. I actually remember the exact address, 198 Elmwood Avenue. The place was creepy, but it was our favorite for late-night thrills. One fall night, a few of us decided to go to the church and have a little drink inside. It was a cold night, and the air had a biting chill to it. There were 6 of us, me, Luna, Gina, Johnny, Max, and Allie. The church was behind an 8-foot chain-link fence. We had to climb to get inside. The doors were all boarded up, so we always entered through a side window. Once inside, the first thing you noticed was the floor, or lack thereof. The entire first floor was just dirt. like someone had ripped out the floorboards years ago, leaving just a hole in the center where a set of concrete stairs led to the basement. The basement had 3 rooms, but only one had a door. The other 2 just had door frames. The first room we went into was the big one. There wasn't much in it, just some old furniture, broken chairs, and a beat-up couch. I remember having to shut Johnny up about a dozen times because he was a lightweight, and the little alcohol he'd had made him really loud and restless. In a group this big, that was always an advantage, and I felt a lot safer knowing there were a bunch of us. We played around for a while, drinking and laughing as usual. We had a speaker playing music, but out of nowhere, a door slammed shut. I literally jumped in fright. We stood frozen, looking at each other with worried expressions. At first I thought one of us had accidentally slammed the door, but no one was around. Almost immediately, Luna, Gina, and Johnny ran off upstairs, leaving me, Max, and Allie behind. We were the fearless ones, and none of us wanted to go alone. My heart was definitely pounding, I admit, but I wasn't going to let fear paralyze me. Max and Allie were thinking the same thing. I don't know if it was out of curiosity or stupidity, but we decided to investigate. After staying silent for a few minutes, the 3 of us crept over to open the door that had slammed shut. Behind it was a small room. The first thing I saw was a dresser with a cracked mirror and stains on the surface. At first I thought it was old paint or something, but as I got closer, I noticed the stains still had a sticky sheen to them, like they hadn't been there very long. I felt the hairs on the back of my neck stand up, and I was left wondering if I should have left sooner. Then I saw a picture, an old black and white photograph of a woman in a wedding dress, smiling. There was something eerie about it, something that gave me a bad feeling. I backed away, but just as we turned, we heard another noise. This time it wasn't the door. It was coming from one of the other rooms, the one we just left. Max and Allie decided they'd had enough, and I wasn't going to argue. We grabbed our stuff and got out of there as fast as we could. We climbed back over the fence, and as we fell on the other side, neither of us said a word. As I turned, I could swear I saw the silhouette of a person standing at the open window. I pray it was just my mind playing tricks on me, but I'll never know for sure. My friends and I never went back there, even as we remained friends. I've actually been back to that church, although by the time I went to check it out again, it wasn't a church anymore. It had been completely demolished. I have no idea what we saw that night, but I'm glad my friends were there to witness it with me. If I had been alone, I would doubt that any of this happened. If anyone wants to do some research, go ahead. I was never able to find out anything online, but I wouldn't be surprised if that church had a history that we don't know about.